You're listening to Two Beers Until Phronesis, a podcast where we discuss the ideas of philosophy, ethics, religion, history, and culture. Alongside regular guests and friends, we discuss some of life's big questions over a few beers. Enjoy. So in the last podcast, we were looking at a book by Julian Baggini called Virtues of the Table. And we're sort of looking at some of the things that he said, also kind of introducing some of our own ideas as well. If you haven't seen it, you can go and listen to it. You don't have to have done that, but you can if you want. Up to you.
I don't know. I would say that it's a really good primer for the information that we're going to be talking about today. And I think there's a lot of good ground that was covered in that as well.
I would agree with you then.
Hell yeah, dude.
So we were looking specifically in that podcast about sourcing food. So where food comes from and kind of how to think about that morally, intellectually. So some of the examples we raised were like whether we should buy local, growing and buying your own stuff, and kind of how to do that, getting the best nutrition and being ethical. And I think one of the most important things we were talking about was how the ethical side of everything and the taste side of everything is all connected. So those questions are interpersonal. They're about how we treat other people. But in this one, we're going to be talking more about self-care. But again, these things are kind of all connected. So I'd say a part of self-care is being not dogmatic, not ignorant, caring for a sense of character and developing intellectual moral virtues, which also obviously extends back into interpersonal ethics. So I think it's all one project, and that was kind of our main point. And also, you want to be avoiding strict rules. Like we talked about vegan and buying local and how you can sometimes look in between the lines of those things and you accept that there are some nuances and inconsistencies, and the real world is a little bit more complex than arbitrary blanket rules can account for. So basically avoiding die-hard rules and thinking more holistically about ideas like character and virtues. So that's kind of that stuff we're going to talk about today. So this one in particular is talking about dieting and fasting. So the idea of when not to eat and why that might be a good thing for ethics, why it might be a good thing for everything else about developing yourself as a person. So again, we're going to go through Julian Baggini's book. There's 4 broad things he looks at. We might look at some more. It's kind of how these 4 virtues and broad attitudes can equip us for dealing with not eating.
And Julian Baggini, that guy that did that, hey, I'll put some new shoes on a Sunday song.
No,
Some fucking lead in my fucking
oh my god.
I'm sorry.
That's a good one. So the first one he talks about is willpower in relation to losing weight, which I think is a big one.
I talked about this in the last podcast, but for those who haven't heard it, I work in occupational health, and I do risk assessments with people who are either absent from work or potentially unfit to do their job role. And a big part of that is identifying people that need certain types of support. And sometimes we speak with, well, I say sometimes, a lot of the time we speak with people, particularly engineers, who are really badly obese, really badly overweight, have very poor nutritional habits, lead a very poor lifestyle from a nutrition point of view. And I have to be able to go through with that, then basically do like lots of fact finding and stuff. And then obviously I can make a referral for them to a nutritionist. I am allowed to give like basic level nutrition advice. I have had training on that. But obviously that has a limit within my job role. But outside of that, because I'm around nutritionists so much and because like I'm presented with that, I think before I went into this job, I knew that there were a lot of fat fuckers out there, but doing this job made me realize just how big a problem it is, because I'm literally faced with it every day. Like every time I assess someone, I have their BMI up in front of me, and the amount of people who are technically obese is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So anyone who claims that obesity is not an epidemic is, well, at least in the Western civilization anyway, like kind of like the UK and like American places, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. It's really bad.
I guess nutrition is a massive part of how you guys have to think, but more so than me, because you all do some form of sport or regular exercise, and I don't, because I'm fucking lazy. Or martial arts as well. Like you guys must have to think about it a lot. Has weight ever been problem, or have you always just maintained on top of it? It's like, have you ever had to exercise willpower to a like extraneous degree?
I'd say conversely, my weight's been a bit too low before, and I'll be the first to admit that. I mean, I've got a body fat percentage that does fluctuate between 4 to 5, and I know that's taking consistent measurements over a few months. At the beginning of the day, whatever, same sort of water weight. So I could probably do with an extra sort of like kilo or two of fat over winter for training, and then maybe a bit more muscle mass. But yeah, that's probably the lower echelon for me.
Crazy, man. Yeah, no, I had the same problem as grilling, to be honest. Like, I used to be ridiculously underweight. I mean, if you boys remember what I was like when I was younger, I mean, you kind of saw a bit of it. But Sam grew up with me at secondary school, and like I was ridiculously skinny. So it was big deal for me, like from a self-esteem point of view, and also like for what I wanted to do, like when I got into sports, because I didn't get into sports till much later. I didn't start boxing until I was like 19, so I had to put on a lot of weight. Obviously, then I got older and things started to change a little bit, and I was able to hold weight a lot easier. So recently, I've actually had to lose weight. Not that I got fat, but like I was like just over 80 kilograms, and I wanted to get back down to the weight I compete at. So that's a big part of boxing. It's like being able to lose weight or gain weight when you need to. So yeah, it's been a big part of what I do, particularly in later life.
What about you, Sam?
Yeah, it's all fucking good, mate.
You've always been on top of it.
No, I was like pretty fat kind of uni, just ate too much food. And then I think I've talked about this before. I don't know if I covered it in the last one, but it's mainly just about like energy release and like mental focus. But I think I went a bit too ham like about a year ago doing intermittent fasting, literally dropped like fucking stone. It's not cool. But yeah, too much running, not enough eating is not good.
Yeah. I think it's probably better characterized as like self-control rather than willpower. I don't know. It could go either way, really. There's not much difference between the two terms, but I feel like self-control sometimes gets at what you need to be doing more, because willpower kind of suggests that it's the power that you can fucking call on like some sort of magic fucking spell, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I've had to keep weight off a little bit, especially as I started working in a bar. There's a lot of fucking stout everywhere, a lot of ale, and I quite like those things. So yeah, that can sometimes be an issue. You know, I am starting to develop love handles, which is an issue. But you know, it's just a case of kind of limiting exposure. And one of the best things I think he talks about is bright lines. I don't know if you've ever come across the idea of bright lines in terms of like keeping off of certain things.
No,
what's that?
I think it's a little bit like we were talking about before about having clear goals. I think we talked about this in the New Year's podcast. We're talking about resolutions. Yeah. So the idea of not saying something woolly and vague like "don't drink too much," because it's always open to some discretion. Because too much, especially if you have more and more, it's like what is too much? That's too ill-defined in your head. If you say no alcohol today, that's so much better, and you're on a much better path towards maintaining that level of willpower or self-control, whichever one you want to call it. But if you really think the one drink won't kill you, then you might not respect the bright line enough not to cross it. But a bright line could also be too restrictive, and it's like it could destroy your quality of life completely. If you just say like never ever drink, it's like that probably won't work too.
Yeah. So
you need to believe the bright line, but don't make it too restrictive. So you need to get it into a space where it works, is what he talks about. And to do that, you sort of have to realize that it is arbitrary, but come to terms with that arbitrariness. Because sometimes you just think, oh, it doesn't matter which cigarette it is. I'll just fucking, because you know, technically I can quit now, I could quit tomorrow. I one more is not going to kill me. But it's like, if you have that attitude, it's fucking not going to work. So you have to kind of recognize that it is arbitrary.
Yeah, this is where things need to be sort of quantified more consistently, i.e. a unit of alcohol, a litre of this, a gram of that, because a lot of people don't apply that often enough. They're not seeing the logic in, or the factual science in what they're doing, what they're consuming. I mean, I know so many people that would, virtue signal, oh, I'm so healthy because I'm having a salad. Yeah, they've literally just put 4 leaves of spinach on top of like a donut or something, which more than cancels that out.
That's pretty healthy.
It's the idea of like saying, oh, it's not this cake or this beer. it doesn't have to be that, but it sort of does for you to fucking get started on it. You have to just arbitrate. You just pick one. Just go this one.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You get into that sort of manana sort of like delaying it. Like that's why I tell people like I have to do a lot of goal setting with people, and like if we agree we're going to do like not just nutrition, this is like, you know, for goal setting for like mental health or anything like that, I'll tell people like, okay, well, we've agreed on this. I was like, don't wait till tomorrow to do it. Like I said, because you won't do it. Like you need to start this now, like, because you need to understand that this is something that you are implement. This is the new you starting right now. You need to put in effect. And if you wait, then yeah. But I think some people go too far the other way though, because like you said, people can be too restrictive, and that's not helpful either. And I see that a lot. And I see people that like get to the point where they're like, the thought of having something that they deem to be unhealthy is just catastrophic for them in their head.
Oh, really?
And that's not good. Yeah, I know. Like people just like have an absolute meltdown because they had a McDonald's on the weekend. And what they don't realize is that like that's doing more harm than good, because they're going to get stressed out. And like, I won't like bore you with the science, but like your body does a whole load of shit when you get stressed. So it's like, it's actually better to just like find something you can do where you
eat the McDonald's but not be stressed about it.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It's going to derail your progress way less. So like, if that's what he says in that book, then I agree with that 100%. You need to have the balance. Like, yeah, you need to make sure that you pick, that you're specific in your goal set, and you need to have a why. Because if you don't know why you're losing weight or gaining weight or whatever the fuck you're doing, then you're not going to stick to it, because you have to have something to get you through the hard times. You have to have like that one thing that you can keep coming back to. Like, why have I started this in the first place? Oh yeah, that's why. Okay, that's all I need to know. But at the same time, if you're too like hot on it, if you're too restrictive, if you're too like psycho with yourself about it, it's not going to be enjoyable. It's just going to be stressful. You're more likely to like relapse and fuck up.
I mean, there's the whole sort of, you know, there's healthier fats than others, and you need to have less refined sugar and all that. But ultimately, your body's still breaking down 3 or 4 different types of macromolecular forms, and it's all kind of just like nitrogen, potassium, and whatever rearranged in different forms anyway. It is sometimes a bit overanalyzed, and that's why some people panic.
Well, the one that people stress about is chemicals. And like they're always talking about, oh, you're going to eat stuff because it's got like chemicals and stuff. And they're like, unless you can show me like a chemical that's actually like had a lot of reliable studies done on it. I'll give you a clue. Aspartame is not one of them, because aspartame is like been shown time and time again to be fine. But if you can show me like a chemical that has like a lot of studies done on it, but you find a chemical you find in foods,
radium,
that's actually like something that's like really, really bad, then fair play. But apart from that, people just freak out when they see chemical names. What they don't realize is that you could actually break a banana down into its chemical compounds. And once again, it comes down to this whole sort of like people's perception of things is what drives their kind of like actual behavioral habits. And there'll be so many people that'll be like, oh, I eat a chemical-free diet and things like that. It's like, that's bollocks. Like everything you eat is made up of chemicals. Like it's impossible not to.
I don't know if you've counted this, but I think some people are really in denial or stubborn about starting a diet. You know what I mean? Like they sort of keep trying to wear the same jeans, even though they're going up a waistline. And it's like, so long as they don't buy the big pair of jeans, they're all right. And it's like, that's a form of fucking mental gymnastics. That's so much willpower to do that.
It is.
It's just like, just do it, mate.
Laziness and fear of failure, usually. Yeah. They don't trust themselves to get the job done because they have low self-esteem. That's often what you'll find. But
yeah.
So how did you go about losing your weight, Sam? Because I remember you weren't fat. You were exaggerating a bit there, but you were a bit chubs at uni. Like I got some photos of you, and yeah, you definitely had some cheeks on, yeah. But like, his face cheeks, by the way, not his. Yeah.
Just elaborate on that, mate. I wasn't questioning it, but you know,
just calling Sam thick as fuck on live podcast.
The thing is, I do actually have the ass of a fucking 25-year-old Nigerian princess, so that that's also true.
Nice, yeah. But yeah, how did you go about doing it?
Just fucking eat less food and move more body.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean? It's legit not difficult. But to be fair, it's just like I'm actually just a bit of a fucking psychopath. So it's like, you know, you said about like if you have a why, and it's just like, it's that fucking Nietzsche quote, isn't it? If you have a big enough why, then you can get through any how.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, it's a byproduct, right? You shouldn't go. I think dieting to lose weight is fucking weird, and I think that's a sign of mental illness. And it's just like who cares? Who cares what size you are? You should be our size. The fact that I got red pill where someone said like, yeah, walking around with fat in your body is like walking around with like fucking 350 Snickers bars taped to you. And you're like, oh yeah, that is actually what it is. That's really, really weird.
It sounds, yeah, like, so basically you just use like metacognition. You're just like trying to think about, or did it just come naturally?
No, that's what fat is. Fat is just literally stored food. You don't fucking need it on your body. People who are like, oh, all this cool stuff. Yeah, awesome if you're fat, and like that's genetics, whatever, doesn't matter. It's like you don't actually need that shit unless you're planning on not eating for like a week, which you're not going to not do. Then you don't need it. But I think if you just change your diet, and you're talking about how McDonald's is not to blame and stuff, I think food is massively to blame because it just triggers your pleasure like release receptors. It's a dopamine response system, right? Just dumps that. So when you stop eating food that's bad for you, you stop wanting that food.
Yeah, I know, but the food doesn't have agency. It's the addiction to the food. It's like, but
well,
like
it does. Of course, it does. Like sugar is literally an addictive chemical. I remember I talked about the poo transplant, right? I think we all have a very exaggerated sense of how much we control our bodies and how much we control our actions. And it's like, if you don't eat donuts, you're not going to crave donuts because you haven't had donuts to crave.
Yeah.
When you don't eat bad things, you don't want the bad things because your body is not constantly asking you for that thing that's previously had that gave it a big dopamine surge.
I think there's another point about, obviously you mentioned genetics. It's like, yeah, okay, some people are big boned, most aren't. I think you also have to factor in like eating disorders and how eating habits can relate to things like depression and anxiety, which I think are much more common and much harder to, I think they have to be tackled separately or differently than just willpower alone.
They feed into each other. So often, like when you're like putting anybody like, so if you got somebody who's depressed or anxious, like it depends. Like if you like, we follow what's called the step care model in psychology, which is where you look at addressing like, are they able to engage in like self-help or something like that first before we look at any low-level CBT or like talking therapy or something like that. Often if you'll find that somebody that's depressed or anxious and has a problem with weight as well, or like a problem, not necessarily, because this is the other thing I was going to talk about earlier. Like when we talk about like poor nutrition, it's not just necessarily that they're overweight or they're underweight. They could be a normal weight. They could have a normal BMI, but they could be eating like shit. They could be eating like a terrible diet that completely neglects potential food allergies they have, or like intolerances, or chronic inflammation or anything like that. So like there's so many, like it's such a multifaceted thing, but they do feed off one another, and you have to start somewhere. And often I find that when we've got people who are really, really depressed or really anxious, you have to set them quite simple goals. And sometimes it can be just as simple as, why don't you just try cooking yourself something nicer? Why don't you try eating something a bit nicer? And you might find it makes you feel a bit less shitty in the morning, might have a bit more energy about you. So you can use one to help the other. And the same goes for people that are really struggling with weight loss as well. Like perhaps like someone's really overweight. Well, every time I try to lose weight, I just can't seem to have the willpower. All right, okay, how's your mental health? Not too great. I'm really depressed. Right, so maybe we try with the angle of fixing your depression first, or improving your depression. Speak with your GP, see if they can offer some treatment, and then have a crack at losing weight then, and see if maybe that helps. So they tie in together, and you'll find it's a domino effect. If you fix one, you'll often find that you can fix the other as well. But yeah, it's really common to see issues with weight or malnutrition in depressed and anxious people, because like they typically just don't look after themselves. That's a key characteristic of those kind of mental health disorders is lack of self-care.
Yeah, it sounds like those goals got to be really incremental, because otherwise it can be so destroying for morale if you're giving something that's just not tangibly
100%.
achievable within a sort of like a time frame.
I'm not going to make any give any names, but I had a lady on the phone the other day who told me that I can't go out the house at all. And I was like, really? I was like, what have you tried? And she was like, well, I'll stay in the house for ages, and then like one day, like I'll finally work up the courage and I'll go out shopping and like try and go see my friends and stuff like that. I was like, well, you're doing too much then. I said, let's try simple. How about tonight you're going to go out and you're going to stand outside your front door for a minute and get some fresh air. And you go come back in and crack on with your evening, go to bed. And then tomorrow you're going to go outside and you go stand outside for 2 minutes. Okay. And if 2 minutes is too far, that's fine. Let's pull it back. Let's go 1 minute 30. And it took me a while to explain it to her, but I was trying to explain that you need to do like sort of softly catchy monkey, and like rather than do it all in one go and like try and hit it too hard. And once she did that, like instantly it worked. I caught up with her 4 days later. She was doing way better. She was already looking at returning to work. I'd managed to get her some bereavement counseling. Like it was sick. Like just literally telling her, why not try practice just going outside for a little bit of time then, if you can't do the big shopping trips? And she just didn't seem to comprehend that before, that there was such thing as going a little bit slower and like sort of slow and steady wins the race. And it had a profound impact on her, man. And she was like really grateful for it. So that was pretty awesome. But I see it all the time. And the same thing goes for nutrition. You've got to like set realistic goals, and people are too ambitious, don't have proper knowledge on what to do, and are surprised when they fail, because not only were they given shitty advice by someone, but they've also tried to do something way too ambitious. And to top it all off, if they got mental health problems or low self-esteem, where they almost like can sometimes set themselves up to fail anyway, for that whole sort of confirmation bias, where it's like, oh, I knew I was useless at this. I knew I'd never be able to lose weight. Back to where I was before then. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you mentioned a couple of bits there, and reminded me last time we were talking about, this fucking whole idea of like, if you slip up, it's not a lucky streak. You don't just lose it and then like completely give up.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the arbitrary nature comes back into play, because you're just like, well, now hang on. Okay, it was arbitrary, this whole fucking thing. Like when I start and what exact steps I do, it is just whenever. So I can just pick it back up again. I could just start again. And again, like you said, it's just fucking really slow. I think that could be quite a comfort sometimes, because I don't know if you've ever had anything you want to like cut out, like cigarettes or alcohol. I've had to cut down my alcohol consumption considerably. Well, not that considerably, like literally. I have a pint after work most nights I work, and sometimes it's like, oh, that's just a bit too much, because one can turn to a couple, and then you're in the fucking bar that's open till 4. I mean, not now, but with COVID and everything, but like it's within the units of the guidelines for the week, but it's still like all it takes is like an extra sort of thing happening that week, like you guys are down or whatever, and it's pushed way over it. And since those things can happen quite often, it's like one has to be one or whatever. So I don't know if you guys have ever had anything like that. Was it like, I don't know if you guys have had like problems like smoking or fucking anything else, like fucking cake or whatever. You never had to like cut a specific thing out?
Cornflakes. So it sounds pretty tame, but it's literally just cornflakes. I just whack open the box, dive my hand in. I have a problem here. I still eat cornflakes, but just not so that they turn my bones to dust anymore. Cornflakes are good though.
Fair enough.
Sounds like Zach has definitely not kicked his cornflake habit.
Yeah, not at all.
You can hear the crunching of cornflakes in the background.
Yeah, just on my 10th bowl of the day now, lads. Injecting the milk into the veins.
Oh, mate, smoking's easy to quit. You just stop fucking smoking.
Yeah, legit. Did you go cold turkey as well?
It's just like, it's that old phrase, isn't it? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Nice.
Just go, well, cool, I'm just stopping smoking, don't want to do it. And you just tear up the last 6 cigarettes you have and just fucking put them in the bin.
Yeah, bright
and then
lines.
Be angry for a week.
Yeah.
Just be an awful, terrible human being and then inflict damage on others, like emotionally and verbally.
I mean, yeah, it kind of leads into the fucking urge surfing. Don't know if you've come across that term.
Shit, hit me up.
I think it's a little bit like what we were saying with mindfulness, just like noticing the hunger or the urge to smoke or whatever, like dispassionately.
Yeah, it just disappears. Like that's what's cool about fasting is like you notice the hunger waves, like the ghrelin waves, like appear, and you just go, "Nah, not doing it," and then it just goes away.
Yeah,
and I think you can do so many other things.
Yeah, it's kind of like being transcendent, just like stepping back and going, "Okay, I've noticed." That's what I was doing on that fucking fasting. But it's like, I think specifically for dieting or like cutting something out, you just sort of go, "Okay, I'm hungry," rather than I need to eat. And I think there's like a massive difference in the way you frame it. I know you're saying like, okay, just stop doing it. But like some people that just legit can't, like they just need to, obviously they can, but it's just a case of like fucking rethinking how they're approaching the problem.
I mean, you can do it. You just, I think once you make the choice, it's like pretty easy. You just got to make that choice. That's the hard bit.
Yeah, I think some people think they've made the choice though is the problem. And it's like, nah, you haven't. You've got to think, sit yourself in a room and think a bit more about the choice you make and also the steps. Because also like, it's all well and good to say arbitrarily saying, okay, I've made this choice or whatever. We talked about it with ethics in the past and we like just fucking, you can't just like treat things arbitrarily. It's like, has to be in the practice as well. Like you do it, you literally just fucking do it as opposed to just thinking it. And I think it's difficult to kind of, something has to switch for you to do it. And it's
Marcus Aurelius, mate. It's stop talking about what makes a good man and be one.
Yeah, I love that quote. It's fucking
Big Daddy, mate.
Yeah. It's what I was saying earlier though, because like I think often you'll find that people that know they just need to do something but don't do it, don't actually really want to do it. And and they may say like, oh, but I really want to do it. I'm really unhappy about how much I weigh or whatever. And that's probably true. But there can be other reasons why they don't actually want to do it. And like I said, the two key ones I usually find is because they're not keen on the amount of work it's going to involve, so laziness. But a big one is just fear of failure. They just don't trust themselves to do it. They don't actually want to do it because it's going to be a lot of effort, it's going to be a lot of discomfort, and they're scared of what it's going to be like to fail because they have no confidence in themselves. So those are kind of like the two biggest ones I usually see with people that like on face value are saying, yeah, I really want to do this. I really want to beat my depression or lose weight. But they're still not doing it, even when I tell them to, and I'll touch base with them a week later. I'll be like, oh yeah, no, I sent you over that self-management stuff. I noticed you haven't read it yet. And they'll be like, yeah, no, I know I should have. I just haven't. It's like, well, that means you don't want to then. They'll be like, no, I do want to. I'm like, well, talk me through how bad you want it. Like, what needs to change for you to actually do it if you want it then. And usually when you get down to it, it's confidence issues and just, a bit of laziness as well.
Yeah, we were talking about learned helplessness, weren't we?
It's fucking great. What were you saying about learned? That's fucking super interesting, that is.
You were talking about it, I think. I think it was you that yeah.
Oh God, was it me who was being super interesting? Fucking hell.
Yeah, you were, mate.
And helplessness is interesting. Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, well, I think some of it is actually overthinking as well. That's part of the issue. I think some people can just fucking, I don't know. Like I think you're right in like the whole just do it. Very interesting. So in the book actually brings up like a lot of psychological studies and stuff about how deliberate cognition and conscious thought might not be the key to control. It's actually kind of practice.
Because that presumed that like conscious thought and willpower exists, right?
Yes, yeah.
And like that's not certified at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things he does straight away is to bracket the question of free will. He's just like, I'm just going to leave that there. We probably don't have it, but we're gonna...
Yeah, it's a pretty big thing that you want to be throwing around before you use terms like willpower, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just like, let's just talk about free will as in the appearance of free will. I think we're gonna have to do that here as well because just like
choice,
can't...
like the appearance of choosing to do something. But like,
yeah,
but like we said about that woman who had the poo transplant and suddenly she's addicted to sugar and it breaches the blood-brain membrane. It's like that's overpowering your free will. That's literally turning your free will off.
There's this fucking thing. It's like the ability to delay instant gratification is literally just naturally stronger in some people. And obviously, the point of all this is to develop that, which can be done for everyone, as long as the brain literally isn't broken. Like the point is, it's stronger in some people and stronger in not. And like that's literally. Like that poo transplant is like one of those examples, but also he says it's generally a better indicator of academic and career success than IQ, according to all the studies.
Yeah, the conscientiousness is the big 5 personality trait. It's like the one that's most mapped towards success. The conscientiousness and IQ. That makes sense, right? If you're working more, then you're going to more likely to have better things coming. So you're just working more. But do you think there's room for like the negative impacts of other people? Because I think the people generally do love dragging people down. So like if you go, oh, I'm on a diet now, they go, oh no, go on, have this cake, go on, I just bought some, around, have a pint.
Well, I actually think that was the biggest, because like lockdown,
you're not getting a real drink, you just got a water or a lemonade or
like
leaves.
Lockdown, I didn't drink much. I had like 4 at the end of the week, and like when we did a podcast, that was it. And then like now I'm back at the bar. It's like I'm not like blaming anyone, because fucking I like a pint. It's best to have a pint when you're not sat like fucking on Discord or whatever. It's I think it is much more enjoyable in a bar. But at the same time, it's like you've got people around you just going like, go on, have one. You just finished, have a pint. It's like, it's nice. But I can see how for some people where it's a problem and you want to cut down. So I think I've got it in a nice limit now, so it's fine. But like, some people probably that environment is just not helpful for them.
Yeah, man, the amount of times I've just practically been berated, and not by you guys, by the way, but just on any given sort of night out for not having a drink.
I'm sure I've berated you before.
And the uproar when I'm not having a drink is mad, really.
Yeah, I think that was me still, mate. How do you guys feel about gastric band surgery?
It's a crutch for mental weakness.
Yeah.
I knew you'd say that. That's why I've stuck this here.
I don't even believe that. It's just a fucking meme. I think whatever, like, it's pretty fucked up if human beings get to that point, really.
It's a
It's
a really
brain, is it?
It should only be used in like genuinely life-threatening situations, and even then, like I'm not sure off the top of my head like just how many of those that there would truly it would be necessary. But it's like it's a classic case of treating a symptom, not a cause. So like rather than like drilling down and saying, okay, this person has a problem with eating and has made no real successful effort, shall we say, because they may have like made some what they thought was effort to lose weight, but they made no actual like successful progress in losing weight. Let's have this fucking awful constrictive surgery like done on them instead. Whereas realistically, they need a referral to a good nutritionist. They need to be talked about, the benefits of like going down this route and the longevity of it, and the fact that gastric band surgery is not the way to go, and it's going to cause lots of other problems in the long run potentially. But they don't. People like the easy way. It's the same reason that people who have like lower back pain or something like that, or like pain in their knee or something like that, they'll instantly just be like, oh, I need surgery. Or even like prior to surgery, like people are like, oh, I need physio straight away. It's like, well, no, like there's so many things you can do prior to that, and there's so many things you should do prior to that. Go down that route first. Really put some effort into it. Why are you just jumping on the surgery? But again, it comes down to those two things mostly that I talked about earlier, which is a combination of laziness and a lack of self-belief or a disdain of failure. It's usually the key things that you'll see with people that will go for a surgery, as opposed to what they perceive to be the harder, trickier route that they might fail at. They see surgeries.
I think that speaks a lot of truth, really. I do feel like there is a significant portion of people who aren't quite fair when it comes to gastric band surgery. One of the things to remember is that it actually fucking works. It is relatively low risk as an operation. Obviously, there are fucking problems with it, and it isn't something to consider lightly. But it does actually work, and the people that diet are actually more likely to be the people that are obese. The biggest indicator of somebody being obese is if they've been on a diet before, because lots of people relapse, and this seems to have more success. Obviously, it's not something that you should prescribe to anyone. Like it is dangerous enough to be like, okay, fucking hold back on it and try everything else first. And if everything else doesn't work, then maybe consider it. But I do feel like some people just hate it because people are trying to reduce their cravings, because that's literally what it's for, isn't it? It's like fucking just tighten your stomach. You don't want to eat as much. The analogy would be like if somebody was addicted to drugs and took medicine to reduce their cravings. Or, the wife of a crackhead locks him in a cupboard It says
like methanol or
yeah, just or just like I think people's
rehabilitation programs.
Yeah, or like you know,
literally what they do.
Yeah, or you stick someone in a cupboard and be like, okay, you don't have the willpower at the moment to do that, to come off it. I've got to like lock you away, and then see the chemical addiction goes away. I feel like this is just the same thing. Obviously, it's a little bit more dangerous. It's not the first thing people should jump to, but I feel like some people, even in extreme circumstances, are like, nah, fucking, why are you doing that? It's cheating. And it's like, hang on, what are you someone's trying to balance the playing field because they want to take away that craving, just like the guy who's doing like drug rehabilitation, and you want him to be surrounded by cake all the time. You want him to be like the most stressful situation, just be like, no, do it on your own steam kind of thing. Like you have to. It's like, I don't know.
I think you're misconstruing though the problem, because like what gastric band is like the equivalent of putting a plaster on something. Like, yeah, absolutely, it can work, but as you rightly pointed out, there's a number of risks. So I've seen what that actually looks like. So aside from like things going septic, the gut can become blocked. You can get all sorts of like infections. Like there's a really like bad risk of like blood clots as well. So we actually had a guy who had a pulmonary embolism as a result of a gastric band that had fucked up. To say that like the risks are minimal is not true at all. It's quite a risky surgery. Not something that should be taken lightly. And I would say that anyone that says, I've tried everything else before going to surgery is lying. They haven't. They've just not been effective in what they've done, which is probably as a result of misinformation and a lack of adherence to what they were doing. So you made the point earlier that like most people like have tried weight loss at some point. Most people that are obese have been on a diet. That's absolutely true. So let me get the figures up, because the figures are like absolutely astronomical.
I don't think anyone really wants gastric band surgery, though.
I think a lot of people do, mate. I think you'd be surprised, because they just they see it's the only option. They think it's the only thing that's available to them.
I mean, if you're morbidly obese, it's worth bearing in mind there are fucking horrible health detriments from that as well. When you're talking about the level of obesity that requires gastric band surgery, I do think it's a toss-up.
But that's when I'd say that if you're in a point where it's actually like life-threatening or something like that, those are like the instances where I'd say it's fine to use. But like there's plenty of
same.
But then there's plenty like the problem that you have when you use a surgery is, like I said earlier, you're addressing the symptom, you're not addressing the cause. To address the cause, you have to put in a plan that has some form of longevity, that has some sort of process where this person needs to learn how to manage their condition moving forward.
Yeah, when I say it works, though, what I'm talking about is like, the problem is the urge. The problem is you can't beat the urge. That literally does beat the urge at the source. I know there are other things you will have to do, especially further down the line, and to not relapse. But I do think it does get at quite a lot of it. I think why some people are very critical of it, because it literally is like cheating. I do think it does eliminate a lot of the. I might be wrong. I don't know enough about it.
You can do that without surgery. Like eliminate. So this urge that people talk about. If your diet, if you're like getting to the point where you're getting such bad urges to eat loads of food, then you're not doing a weight loss diet right. It means that you've probably cut too many calories, that you're in too aggressive a deficit, and your body's clucking for it. Most people don't know how to lose weight properly, and that's exactly why we have an obese. So I put up a post on my Instagram like a couple of months ago talking about this, like the number of like people that are successful in losing weight when they set out to lose a certain percentage of their body weight. I can't remember what the figures are off the top of my head, but like it's really high. The amount of people that actually lose weight it's a problem with people keeping the weight off. That's like the main problem, is because people don't know how to do it, and usually it's because they try to lose too much too quickly in one go. And that's why they'll get these cravings. Your body's got a whole load of defense mechanisms in place to try and keep you from losing weight. It doesn't want you to like starve or anything like that. And there's people out there that'll say that putting your body in starvation mode's bollocks, but I think it depends on the way you look at it. I think it's true to a degree. A lot of these people are probably just eating so little compared to what they normally do, that they're instantly getting these cravings, and it's really exacerbated. So a lot of these people would find that if they just slowed down, and all right, yes, they may be obese, they may have health problems, and sometimes time is of the essence, and maybe you could make a case for gastric band in that instance. But I'd say most of the time, What these people need is just a nutritionist to sit down with them and show them some good sustainable practices for losing weight, and to not just go on a fucking juicing diet for 2 months where they like go from eating 6,000 calories a day to suddenly eating 800 calories of kale smoothies a day, wondering why they can't stick at it, wondering why 2 months later they're fucking depressed and they've put all the weight back on, and think their only option is having surgery. I can't understand why I can't lose the weight. I've tried everything. No, you haven't. You've tried some shitty things that got sold to you by some snake oil salesman, and that was your idea of what weight loss is. True weight loss is completely accessible and achievable for everybody. Anyone that says that they've tried to lose weight and they just couldn't, it means they weren't actually losing weight. They haven't got themselves in the calorie deficit. They haven't done it properly. Everyone can lose weight.
I think there are very, very, very small minority that can't, but we're talking about like less than 1%.
Yeah, but
just as a caveat to that.
Yeah, but even in those instances, so you're talking about people that may have like some issues with like hormones and things like that. Even then, they can still lose weight. Those people,
it's like those massive supersized like people who weigh like, I don't know, like 400-500 pounds and are bed bound from when they're like in their mid-20s or something. They literally lose like 50 pounds in 2 weeks just by not eating as much Snickers bars or something.
Yeah, it's physically impossible to be in a calorie deficit and not lose weight. So it's just a question of finding your calorie deficit. Everyone can lose weight. I don't dispute there's people out there that will have certain, genetic or otherwise diseases or whatever that may make that harder. Absolutely. But like you said, they're in the minority. There's a lot of people that seem to think they're part of that minority that actually aren't. There's a lot of people that use genetics as a crutch, as an excuse when they shouldn't. These are the kind of attitudes and beliefs that we have to deal with. Like, oh yeah, no, it's just that's how my dad was, that's how my mum was, or whatever. So that's just how I'm going to be. Yeah. Once again, that's that kind of like preemptive failure. They're just like resigning themselves to it. And once again, you're dealing with these people that don't actually truly want to lose weight. Like there are people that it's more difficult for, but they can still lose weight. Trust me.
Also, it's probably environmentally because they're eating the same things and having the same meal habits that their parents are.
Yeah,
so it's like more environmental than just genetic.
So I've got the stats here for obesity in the UK. So this just puts it in perspective of how bad it was. So this was stats from the NHS for 2018/2019. So 11,117 hospital admissions were directly attributable to obesity. This was an increase of 4% from the previous year when there were 10,660 admissions. 876,000 hospital admissions where obesity was a factor, which was an increase of 23%. The majority of adults were overweight or obese, 67% of men and 60% of women. This included 26% of men and 29% of women who were obese. So that's insane. So the majority of people who were admitted to hospital in those years were either overweight or obese, which just puts in perspective A, how many people there are that are actually that this is a problem for, but B, you often find that people with health issues, other health issues like musculoskeletal related problems, mental health disorders, things like that, will often be overweight or obese as well, which is what you said earlier. So it all ties in. So anybody that anyone that seems to think that the fact I'm obese is not a big deal, yes, it is. That little niggle in your back that could potentially be made better if you fixed your weight. The fact that you're depressed, that could also be made better if you fixed your weight. People don't seem to understand the significance of losing it, and that's why I'm really reluctant to condone people like having surgery and things like that when they could learn sustainable practices to put in place. There's just no excuse for it, in my opinion. I've seen people who've gone from weighing hundreds of kilograms. Like we had a guy called sorry, I nearly said his name then. That'd be instantly fired. We had a guy who was.
Did you give him a fake name?
Let's call him. I don't know. I nearly said Bertie then. I don't know why that name came to mind. Let's call him. Man. He's just a man. He was like 276 kilograms. Which is just absolutely obscene. Like this dude was so badly overweight, it was unreal. But he was able to lose that weight, and if you saw pictures of him, it was just absolutely awful, the state he got himself into. But he got on a pan. He was using Herbalife, admittedly, which I have mixed emotions towards. But, you know, even though they rip people off, they are a viable way to lose weight sometimes. And he was able to lose a ton of weight due to that, and he was able to keep the weight off, and he doesn't come around in our little sickness kind of cycle, we call it, where you see people's names come up time and time again as having lots of periods of sickness absence. Maybe it's because he's used a lot of his sick pay up. That's probably a factor. But I also think a big factor is that since he started to lose weight, it's just improved his health drastically. And he went about losing weight one of the more appropriate ways, as opposed to having surgery. And I think he could have been a prime candidate for it. But like, I'm not here to bash surgery. I guess I'm just saying that when you go for surgery, you sometimes bypass the principles that you can learn from actually going about like the longer, slower way. So I know what you're saying about like,
that's actually what I was just going to say. I do think you learn a lot about mental discipline and like broader things, because I think that's part of the point of what we're saying. I guess is like a lot of these things can be extrapolated to other things, and that's. I think I totally agree with you. Like, because I think I am talking about life-threatening cases, and it's like, then it is just a cost-benefit analysis. It's like, do you want to take the risk? And you know, how much time do you think you have to implement mental discipline? Like, which is better, but do you think you have the time? And it's so from there, I agree with you. Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do actually is like planning and limiting. I've done this with chocolate actually. To basically just buy what you need to cook. Don't fucking buy any more. If you need more, you can always go down to the shop, get a pack of crisps if you really fucking want to. If you really want to do the extra shop, go down to the corner shop. I don't know what your guys' fucking shopping's like, but like I tend to like under buy. So I've kind of cut out like stupid shit, and it's the same at a restaurant as well. Just get your initial order. Don't worry, will it be enough? If you have the time to be there for a couple of hours and you're still hungry, then get the onion rings. It's just, you know, you don't need to, because there's a sort of 20-minute waiting period after you've eaten. It's different for different people, but like average is like 20 minutes where you actually find out if it was enough or not. Just wait that 20 minutes. You got like fucking hundreds of millions of neurons or whatever in your stomach. It's like a second brain. Just fucking wait. Like, it will tell you. It will just fucking tell you. You always eat with your eyes.
Well, I'm not sure whether I said this on the previous poddy, but I think the sensation of you being full psychologically, your brain telling you to stop, is when your stomach's. I think I might have said this. Your stomach's about a third of its actual capacity on average.
Oh, really?
I think so.
I don't think you did.
I can't really cite this source because I heard it from somewhere once, and I can't remember where. But the logic checks out, because if you think when you sit down, you think, "Oh, I'm quite full," but no, come on, are you really, really full? I mean, if you're pushing your body to the limit of every single meal, you probably could have about 3 times the amount of food.
Oh, that's bad. I think I did that once. I had a curry, and I fucking hell. I went for a drink afterwards, and I was just there like.
It's always a curry.
Crying. It is always a curry with me. Yeah. Fucking yeah. Just eat soup. Like, literally, it's like the best food for diets and stuff. But one of the things he says actually is just don't like completely reinvent your diet. Just change it. Just make alterations. And then if that's not actually doing it, just keep altering it. Like, do it slowly in degrees.
Do you want to know what the best diet is? This is going to be one weird trick to lose weight.
Run.
It's keto, isn't it?
Yeah. The best diet to lose weight is whatever diet you want to eat that you're going to be able to keep up for a long period of time and see the results you want, and is not going to make you poorly. So it's going to address any food intolerances and stuff. So what the best diet for you, Connor, is completely different to me. If you eat a diet where you cut out everything that you like, I give you a couple of months before you're fucking going mad and you can't sustain it. So what good is that? A diet should not
absolutely, yeah.
So, and this is an interesting thing, because Sam said earlier, he was saying like bad foods and stuff like that. And I know Sam probably doesn't mean it this way, but a lot of people will say like, "Oh, that's a bad food" and stuff like that. Like, yes, there are some foods out there that if you overconsume them, they will be bad for you. But being honest, most foods out there, if you overconsume them, will be bad for you. Like, it's all about like perspective, and it's all about like balance. Like, if you like chocolate and you cut it out from your diet and you want to lose weight, you're you're gonna find it tougher to lose weight, man. You need some shit in there that's gonna keep you on there, because you can lose weight eating fucking anything. Like, I did this as an experiment once, like, to prove a point to someone that you can lose weight eating anything. Like, I was like eating just like literally just fucking crap, like, for a bit. This was when I was in my final year at uni. I was on the boxing team. And I literally was just like eating like Mackie D's and stuff every day. And I lost weight. I did. I went down by like 4 kilograms. Like, it doesn't really matter what you eat from a weight loss point of view, but ideally you want to eat stuff that's going to keep you full. It's going to keep you healthy. That's why it's good to eat healthy food. That's why, you know, I could go on a diet of like 1,500 calories of McDonald's a day, and I'd definitely lose weight, but I'd feel like shit. I'd have no energy. Like, you know, I wouldn't be getting a lot of like low vitamins and stuff like that. Whereas I could go on a diet of like 1,500 calories of like good balanced stuff. I'd probably feel a lot more full. I'd feel a bit more energetic. So it's like, it's all about having that balance. And people that just think that in order for me to like lose weight, or in order for me to be healthy, I have to cut out anything with sugar in or stuff like that. It's just like, no, like, if you don't like it, if you're fine, if you're okay with cutting it out, like, Sam's a fucking nutcase. Like, I know for a fact that Sam's just happy to eat pretty much, because I'm coaching Sam for strength and conditioning at the moment, and I was like thinking to put him on a nutrition plan, but now I realized like there's no point, because he's just like, he's sound, like, he just will eat the same thing pretty much every day and be content, which I haven't really met many people like that. The majority of people do like to have like their treats and stuff like that, and I think if you took them off it long enough, they probably wouldn't need it, but most people don't want to do that. And to get results, I think sometimes you just have to like allow stuff like that in the diet, and not vilify it so much, not demonize it so much. Like, you know.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, we've got a mate who eats just fucking pure McDonald's.
Does he like a can of Coke? Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, if you're listening, we're talking about you, mate. We've had this conversation with you. Like, that's probably on rails. You know what I mean? That's like, I think that's because it's basically like, we're talking about willpower, and I think rather than just choose, I mean, shit, I think Tim's actually fucking making these decisions himself. I think he fucking knows what he's doing. I think he's like, it's fully informed. He fucking loves it. I think some people confuse diets and think that it's like a lack of hedonism, but it's actually the complete opposite. It's not like withholding things for the sake of it. It's just delaying pleasure rather than denying it completely. There is this, I don't know if you ever heard of St. Francis of Assisi. He used to, he's quite a prolific sort of early Christian philosopher, theologian. He was so into like self-denial that when he did allow himself to eat cooked food, he'd mix it with ash or like cold water, because he just fucking hated the idea of enjoying anything. I think that's...
This was Sam in a previous life.
I am fucking on board. I'm on board, mate. I like this guy.
That's literally just... He just fucking hated liking things, because he's, you know, he was just like super Christian in a really aesthetic way. And yeah, it's not about that. It's also not Tim, it's probably not about eating like McDonald's constantly. I think there's a happy medium between those two, basically, is what I'm saying. Where it's literally just like, just delay that gratification, exercise some willpower, and just think like, okay, happiness, but happiness in the long term. You know, not happiness in the day. Like, just think on a more sort of on a scale of longevity when you're thinking about happiness. You know, think about happiness for 30 years, not 20 seconds. Yeah.
I think there's more to life than eating food. Like, food is good, but how much of a percentage of like your life is it? Like, how much should you care about it? Like, you're not like a dog. You don't need treats. You don't need cookies because you did a good work today. It should just be like, if your enjoyment comes from other, and this is what I think Kieran might have been mentioning with these people, if they've got unfulfilling lives or whatever, then you go get something bad to make yourself feel bad. Well, I think your fulfillment is probably better to try and find it from somewhere else rather than like Cookie Crisp.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I think that more kind of nuanced intellectual, you know, where we get pleasure from and what fulfills us can also be part of food. I think it's just a different approach to food, and like even comes from limiting food. Like food's fucking unavoidable. We're always going to have to be eating food and enjoying it to some degree. I think you can just change how you do that and like what kind of enjoyment you get from food. I don't know if it's kind of like a higher or lower pleasure thing, but like thinking of food as a more, well, as a luxury as opposed to a right, you know, and not just eating to be full, you know, eating to enjoy different things, you know, trying new food, for instance, be part of learning. I don't know.
Yeah, I had an athletics coach once who told me to eat to live, not live to eat, basically. I'm
not entirely sure. I think that's a Socrates quote.
Okay, it could be. He might have paraphrased them.
Yeah.
Another little trick that I find, going back to the sort of like the weekly food shop, I always make sure I do the shop on a full stomach. Because if I do it in a rush, when I'm hungry or more irritable, I'm more likely to make impulse buys and get stupid snacky stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about my shopping habits.
No, mate.
Just get Brazil nuts, just pure selenium. Just Brazil nuts, nothing else.
Selenium's good, mate.
We keep buying a lot of chocolate at the moment. Ashley has been the last couple of shops. Ashley's bought him a big bar of Galaxy, and it's made me so happy. I love my snacks, mate.
I'm just going to take a quick piss, and I'll speed through these last points really quickly. Building off what we were just saying just now, one of the other things he says is keeping weight off, and how that's like the really hard part. And the virtue he suggests is humility. So this is kind of a relatively convoluted point compared to the willpower one. It's not quite as straightforward. It's mainly like recognizing you're going to fail, like along those kinds of lines. So one of the things he talks about is like humility is about experiencing the best stuff, not subjugating yourself to the worst. So like humility isn't just like, because I think I've talked about humility in like a religious context, how it can be self-destruction in the past and like ascetic stuff and kind of putting yourself down. But it's actually, yeah, it's not all this like hiding your face, hiding your hair, flagellation, eating grains of rice and stuff. It's also about recognizing limitations and failures in a more positive way and like kind of being inspired by stuff. So yeah, in terms of recognizing when you're going to fail, I don't know if you've heard of the GI diet, Kieran.
I was on mute. Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and like super fasting diets. Obviously, I doubt you would recommend anything like that.
Again, it comes down to what I said earlier. Like no two diets are going to work for the same person. Like I could put you on a low carb diet, like an Atkins diet or something like that, and it could do really good for you for a bit. Whereas other people wouldn't be able to fucking stand it. Like, you know, it depends on what your goals are, what demands you put your body through on a daily basis. Are you an athlete? Are you a mountain climber? Or are you somebody who's relatively sedentary? Like, there's so many factors in your job, in your personal life, the state of your mental health that you have to consider. If I was going to, because I could talk about diets till the cows come home, but like, if I was going to like say one thing about diets is that they're 10 a penny. Like, they've been around for so fucking long. Like, there are some just absolute insane diets out there. I can't remember if I talked about this last time, but like obviously we've got like the current iterations of like common diets today. So you got like vegan, keto diet, paleo, like these are like the popular ones. But what you'll find with diets is that they're quite cyclical. So if you go back in history, you'll see that there would have been various iterations of that are similar to the diets that we have today. But if you go back far enough, like there's some absolute insane diets. So there was one called, I think it was literally just called the Avoiding Swamps diet. And it was basically like back in the 1700s, there was a guy called Thomas Short. He was basically a geezer who observed that like more fat people live near swamps. And he hypothesized.
What are you doing?
Yeah, and he hypothesized that avoiding them may be the key to like staying in good shape.
Avoiding swamps or fat people?
Avoiding swamps. Yes.
Avoiding
Yes. That's what it's called, the avoiding swamps diet. There was another one. So there was a guy called
Of course, silly me.
there was a guy called Graham, was his surname. I can't remember his first name, but he was basically like a preacher, like a minister or something like that. He basically believed that people were fat because they had like too much sex. They were fucking too much. So this was back in like the 1800s, and he promoted something called the Graham diet, which is basically an older iteration of the vegetarian diet. This is the guy who actually came up with the Graham cracker. If anyone's heard of that, Graham crackers, they're like they're like a sweet snack in America. But they were developed in an effort to reduce obesity and stop people from having sex. So like, if you go back far enough, you'll see some like insane stuff, and you'll think, oh, that couldn't possibly happen today. But then you've still got things like the lunar diet, which is basically it's usually performed in like one of two ways. So you got like what's called like the basic moon plan, and then you've also got the extended version. The first plan is basically a variation of like a juice cleanse, which hopefully you guys are familiar with what that is. Basically, that the individuals are only permitted to drink water and freshly squeezed fruit or vegetable juice. This is basically they do this in like a 24-hour period during either the full or the new moon. And the extended version basically means the dieter needs to begin with an initial fast during the full moon, and then they follow a series of like eating plans that are like tailored to various moon phases and shit. So like they won't be like eating after 6 p.m. or they'll be eating less than normal. And like genuinely, it's like still something that's going on today. So I wrote down the website because it was like, it's fucking unbelievable. Yeah,
I'm imagining like one of these 90s websites where it's like little graphics and GIFs and things.
Yeah,
like.
no, it literally is, mate. Like the website is just so fucking.
That's when you said GI index diet. Is that like a glycemic index thing? Was it something else?
Yeah. So basically the purpose of it is to like kind of like it's all to do with like managing like blood sugar levels. So it's to like stop people from like having spikes in blood sugar levels due to like certain amounts of carbs or whatever in their diet. And it can be quite popular for people that are obese, but I know that sometimes they use like the GI diet for like people with diabetes and things like that.
Yeah, I think his main point is that it's incredibly extreme, and I think it goes into like a lot of this point. I think we just covered in the last one. I was just trying to look at like through my notes some of and I think we basically covered it all. But I think the main emphasis is basically just that we have very little actual control of our urges and bodies and whatnot, and basically blood sugar is a very set thing of what determines how we feel and act. And I think it goes back to what you were saying about being fucking angry bastard when you're low on sugar or you're fasting or whatever, and because that's something he experienced as well, something I experienced as well.
Sorry.
Last day.
As you were.
So not exactly that we're slaves to our biology, because he goes on and on about how we basically have no free will, and then he sort of says, but we can recognize that, and that's the point at which we might be able to stick a little bit of control in there. So you will never be able to kind of help the feeling of like you have a stab of envy or a pang of guilt, or you know someone fucking falls on their face and you snigger or whatever, and you're a terrible person. But those automatic feelings you're not going to be able to help. But the one thing that you can kind of help is your reaction to it. It's sort of like stoicism coupled with determinism. And yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. So yeah, that's basically why he says it's humility, because just accept that there's very little you can actually control, and this is why diets need to be more gradual, because like that poo transplant thing, it's like if it's fucking, this is just the crux of the conversation, the poo transplant, but like legitimately if you've had a fucking poo transplant, you're going to be craving sugar, and that's going to be fucking hard. And just basically accepting, like working with the grain of the body in order to diet. Because if you just fucking go on some random stupid ass diet, it's just not going to work. I think that's the reason why most people fail. It's because they're not really listening to their body at the same time.
Yeah,
as do things like urge surfing. Yeah,
100%. Listening to your body is such like an important thing. There was a really, I can't remember, did I talk about this last time about a guy called
Corpulence, the essay?
Yeah. So that's exactly what that is. So he was a geezer, like, who, for those of you who didn't hear it last time, he basically did something that was akin to like a low carb diet. And he kind of like noticed that he enjoyed it and that it worked for him and he was able to lose some weight. But he made a really important point that he was kind of like, he said that I understand, I can't remember his exact words, but he was like, I understand that this worked for me, but I'm not going to go out there and say that this is like an amazing diet and everyone should do it. Like, this is just what worked for me. And like that was a long time ago. Like, and it's just so many people just don't seem to understand. Like, that was the 1800s. Like, these days, people don't seem to understand that just because there's this diet they've tried that works for them doesn't mean you should go out and like perpetuate it like for other people to use necessarily, because we're all so different. Like, you know, even if people say that, oh, the vegan diet is great, it's like, well, that's fine, but like, there's still people out there who can't have certain vegetables, or, you know, there's some people out there that can have really, really low levels of iron, and then they're going to need like supplements and things like that. And even then, a lot of supplements, your body's not necessarily going to absorb them quite as well as if they were eating something like meat, which is a bit more bioavailable. Like, there's so many like variables that you shouldn't just be going out and saying, yeah, this diet. If there's anybody that's claiming that they have a diet that is the best diet for such and such, or that you should be on this diet, they're a fucking hack. They are, like, end of.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as one good diet for any one person. There's some general principles you can follow.
Yeah.
But apart from that, like, you know, you do you, man. Like, if you said about like love handles and stuff, like, if they're not that big a deal to you and you're not that asked about losing them, then don't. Like Sam said earlier, like, what's the point?
Yeah, no, it's just keeping on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that dude you mentioned, like, he had the intellectual humility to just be like, yeah, no, this works for me, and it's.
Connor, sit down at the table and eat your bowl of sugar.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to fasting before I fucking fall asleep. Okay, cool. The virtue he uses for fasting is autonomy, which shouldn't come as any surprise. Now, I know you guys, so Kieran and Sam, you're big on fasting, but Zach, have you ever done a fast?
Not really. I think if I fasted, I'd probably just die. I've got no reserves left. I wouldn't say I've ever even intermittently fasted before. There have been periods where I'm just going to realise, I haven't eaten that much this evening, and I've then woken up late the next day, and I've just clocked, I've gone about 16 hours without having food. As long as I don't keep doing that over a 4 or 5 day week period or whatever, I'll probably need to catch up on calories or something. But I've never needed to personally myself.
Fair enough. I think you should try it. I tried it.
I guess
what was your
I've restricted the amount of
it?
calories I've taken in just by eating healthier stuff like white fish, brown whole grain rice, vegetables. That's filled me up sufficiently, and I've woken up the next morning and it just feels like any ounce of fat that was hanging on my stomach has just disappeared. So I've never really sort of needed to in that regard.
I guess it's less about need and more about just kind of, I don't know. I think it can be a very good thing to do, because there's two kind of misconceptions about fasting. I realized this when I said this to somebody I work with. I was like, I'm doing a fast tomorrow. And they were like, what are you not eating? I was like, everything. He's like, right. Because quite a lot of fasts, especially religious fasts, it's worth bearing in mind. It's not about fucking stopping eating completely. And a lot of them are fasting from, so not just specific kinds of foods, but just fasting for a large majority of the day, like Ramadan. Catholic Friday fast is just meat, or maybe some other food. And the Vrati basically ends in a giant feast. A lot of people get fatter from Ramadan as well. So it's also about not just the body, but the soul, if that doesn't sound too woolly. But I think if you have a sort of existential view of the soul, not a metaphysical one, I think it can work in a secular context as well. I think if you don't believe in God, I think it's fine to say words like soul. My soul wasn't enriched from fasting, to be honest. I just felt fucking grumpy and lethargic for a day. I did a 24-hour fast. I was just doing water. I didn't touch anything else. Didn't even have tea. I did try not to move very much.
Yeah, don't smash up some intensive exercise, obviously, but
yeah, I didn't want to push it just in case I did faint.
you felt mainly the negative effects from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem was I broke it very badly. It's anniversary dinner, and I had a calzone, which is not the thing to do. This just fucking defeats the point, I guess. But yeah, it was quite nice to urge surf. Actually, that was one thing I kind of did take away from it. That kind of mindful stuff of being, it's kind of okay. I'm above this thing. It's like the difference between kind of appetite and hunger. It's like, I'm feeling hungry, but I don't actually want to eat. And it did go away, came back, then went away, fucking quite a lot. But yeah, it was only 24 hours. That's kind of small game, isn't it, really? How long have you guys gone, Sam and Kieran?
I'm waiting for Kieran to answer.
No, I was going to let you go first. I've talked so much in this podcast. I'm getting self-conscious.
Fucking chatterbox, look.
I am, mate.
Fucking shitty, mate.
That's fine.
I've done like a 2.5 day, 3 day fast, something like that.
What?
Fuck.
Yeah, it was cool.
Did you feel enriched?
Yeah, mate, I felt pretty woke. It's pretty cool because you just, like you said about urge surfing, it lets you realize that again you're just like this biological machine, and that like when you think you're hungry, you're not actually hungry. It's just hormones telling you that you should eat some food. And then it feels nice to be able to step past that and be like, oh, I'm actually not hungry. I'm actually not going to die. And then you can just drink and keep like having like water or whatever, and you're fine.
Did you find you had to kind of acclimatize to that? So let's say you went sort of half a day, then did it sort of a few days later, then went one whole day before you built up to the 2.5 form.
Yeah. The first one, well, I've only ever done like 24-hour day fast. So I used to just like on Sundays not eat. But then what I did, I just felt like doing a 3-day fast for some reason. Just felt like, I think it was literally halfway through lockdown. I was just like, fuck, I'm just going to sit inside because it was like shit weather. I was like, I'm just going to sit inside, not eat, read books. That was like my entire fucking
Do you
thing.
think you could like have a day of teaching, do
Oh, yeah, I've done it. Yeah, I've done it like many times where you just
fucking hell, I don't think I could.
So like I've done it before. I've literally, so I've gone to the gym in the morning, done a day of teaching, and then done jiu-jitsu in the evening, and then just gone to bed. Because I've done it a couple of days on like a Thursday or whatever. Just as like kind of not straight away, but I've done fast on like a Sunday where I'm not doing much, and then built up to it until it's just like, oh, it is actually just a normal thing you can do. You can just not eat. Because I did a lot of intermittent fasting, and that's kind of like the bridge to it.
Yeah, you do have to fucking bridge into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you just go like cool, intense day, but I find it's. How did you feel like mentally when you were doing it?
In what sense?
So like clear thoughtedness. Did you feel like
Nah, I had a lot of I couldn't think very clearly. I found it harder to concentrate. No, I didn't think. It felt good because I did feel like I was being more autonomous. I felt like I was more in control in that sense of like urges to eat. But nah, to be honest, I don't think I could have really concentrated on a task. I don't think I could have done anything physical really. But I think that's just lack of practice. I think maybe that does come with more exposure to it.
I'm convinced there's a bit of placebo in it, to be honest. Just like so the one thing I do want to address, kind of right-wing fake news extraordinaire. I'm not actually an advocate of fasting. Like I don't do it. Like I've done. I've done some like what you could call, I guess, intermittent fasting, where I experimented with eating windows, but that was purely for I'm still like kind of like undergoing diagnosis of like some digestive issues, so I get like really bad like gastroesophageal reflux disease, or at least symptoms of that ilk. That's like the kind of initial diagnosis, and one thing I was advised to do was to like experiment with eating windows. So that did mean that I was doing like some sort of like intermittent fasting, but that's probably like the only time I've really used it. I've never done a full fast. I wouldn't do it because I personally just don't like. Fair play. I understand what you guys are saying about like you learn about yourselves. It's kind of like there's like a philosophical point to it. Like you're teaching yourselves like what your limits are, what you actually really need, like to survive. But
self-control as well.
I get that, but there's just so many physical things that will happen in your body when you do that as well. Like particularly if you're on a 3-day fast, your body's just going to start breaking down lean muscle mass and stuff straight away. And like if you've got like any kind of like interest in like performance, like as an athlete, you're just going to be undoing work.
Yeah, not going to lie. I mean, especially with like the volume of training I'm trying to do this winter, if I was to go out on the athletics track and do 400-meter efforts, I'd get halfway through the second one and probably just collapse.
You could probably
you would.
You wouldn't do it on that. Yeah, you wouldn't do it on that day. That's like suicide, dude.
I think I understand it more in an abstract concept. I don't think it worked for me. I think it probably could work for me. I'm interested in it as kind of a spiritual exercise because I very interested in like how we fill the gap of God. And I think a lot of people that are doing religious fasting now are probably just blindly following tradition. And I think that fasting is a very big element of religion, even though it should be said that you have fucking monastic orders like the Rule of Benedict. They used to have half a bottle of wine a day. Trappist monks, I don't know if you've had like that really strong fucking Trappist beer. It's like 11%. Thomas Aquinas was a fat bastard. But generally, religion has been like very into fasting. It's always been a massive part of it. And as we sort of try and maybe create a secular alternative, I just wonder if like fasting will play a role in that. Because I think we've talked a little bit about like humanism and kind of redefining atheism and kind of having more rituals and myths. Probably something I've talked about with Nye more, but just kind of wondering if fasting has a role to play in that. Because since it is just such a big religious thing, whether fasting would continue to be, even if just for health benefits. But yeah, I don't think I'm a fan in practice. To me, it's a bit like, try not breathing. The first breath you take after, I feel great.
Yeah.
It's like well, yeah.
That's also a legit practice, though.
I know, I bet it is.
That's super sick because then you're so much more grateful for the things you do have.
Don't wash for 6 months. You'll feel really clean after.
It's like that Seneca thing where it's like take 4 days every month and eat nothing but like the worst food and wear the worst clothes, and then ask yourself, is this the thing I truly fear? Seneca told us to rehearse poverty. It's like once you go through that phase, you're like, okay, cool. So guess when I'm on the bus home or whatever, or when I'm on when I'm like in the airport, I don't actually need that like food. I don't need that thing that I was going to get. I can just choose not to eat. And that's, I think, what he was on about with autonomy. Like it gives you much more control of yourself.
Yeah, I think it's good to try a fast, maybe to inform a diet. So like to do a hard fast, and then realize I can extrapolate these tools for when I'm dieting or for when I'm trying to give up cigarettes, or maybe just like I was saying, like about like sniggering at things or whatever, or like if you feel like you're having automatic reactions to anything, like in conversation, or I think a fast can help inform that, to be like, okay, I am actually,
it's kind of like a reset, right? So like if you get a little bit too bingey and you get a little bit too out of your habits get a bit too bad, you can just do a reset and then you go, oh, okay, I'm now sort of back to a standard baseline. It readjusts how you think about food. Also, the first meal after you do a fat, how was that calzone?
Do you know what? I thought it was, maybe I was just bigging it up too much because everyone's said that the first meal is going to be great. I don't know. It's all right. I don't.
You put off food forever and you never ate anything else since. It's been 3 weeks.
It was a really good calzone, but it wasn't any better or any worse.
I don't know, mate.
I would have deleted it in about 20 seconds.
Oh, I did. I did. Had a couple of cocktails afterwards as well.
I think the spiritual benefit you're talking about 100%. Like, I think that's like the main thing for me of like what you can get out of like. There's some people that swear by it as being like a genuine, like really like you said, almost like a religious experience, and fair play, that's sick. But I don't see any kind of sensible argument as to why anyone should do it like too regularly, because there's just so much physical detriment that can become as a result of it.
Have you seen all the stuff from Dr. Peter Ortega? When you go into osteophases, apparently it's like after 3 days, he's done like fucking week-long fast and shit, and like 10-day fasts. Like it starts.
Didn't someone do a month fast?
Yeah, you can do 36 days without eating. So
Jesus, he should have been dead.
He was he was probably on like a calorie restricted diet, like 500 calories or something. But like after a certain amount of time, like you basically your body starts to just eat away at everything, including like I can't remember. It's like there's this I think it's something in the mitochondria. Like when mitochondria reproduces, it produces like slightly dodgy ones that can lead to cancer. So apparently, like if you go on a fast of over 3 days, it starts to basically delete things that are bad in your body. That's a fucking terrible explanation of the actual science, but it's really, really interesting.
I was going to say, can you link me that? I've genuinely not heard of that, so I can't even comment on it.
It's your boy Dr. Rhonda Patrick and Peter Ortier about, because he was like super into like ultra marathons and stuff. He was like a big like carb head. Like it's just like, oh, I'm going to eat carbs all the time. And he just got super into fasting, and the effect it has on longevity. Like I remember talking to Nye about this. The people who live the longest are people who regularly do fasts. So like,
there are massive health benefits.
Yeah, it's huge health benefits.
But sort of, I would say that's
if used correctly.
You're not going to get in. Yeah, not all the time. If you do it all the time, it's stupid. But apparently, a good thing to do for fast is like once, twice a year. It's not going to help you get jacked and shredded. It might help you get shredded, but whatever. But like, yeah, it's just it's for the soul.
But would you not say that's an issue of causation versus correlation? Because people that are more likely to be doing fasting are therefore more likely to be people that are conscious of their health overall,
and not having as much toxins as well.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, because for a lot of people, it's literally just a built-in tradition. It's such a, like I said, it's such a big part of religion. It's mandatory in a lot of countries, effectively. Ramadan. It's like,
I think just going back to the correlation causation thing, I think it's so fucking hard to do like actual clinical trials of food, like with food being the control category. That probably it is probably like a healthy user bias kind of thing where someone who's been on the internet and is looking at the fasting properties of 3-day fast by Dr. Peter Ortier is probably reasonably aware of some of the science of like eating, right?
Yeah.
So they probably have a little bit more of an understanding than just like Joe Blogs on the street, and therefore the dieting or the fasting is probably not the main factor. But yeah, it's cool to make you feel woke. It makes basically. Now that all the things I like have been taken by other people, like death metal and drinking coffee, I have to do things to just try and pretend that I have a personality, such as not eating food for 3 days.
I'm a firm believer. If you can do something and you feel good after doing it, and it's not actually causing any detriment to you that you're worried about, then do it.
You want to hear about some detriments? So, so I had some like our first meal afterwards was like, cool. I have like some sardines and just like fucking puke them up. So there are some detriments because your body just doesn't know what food is. So you have to like break it back in with like 2 spoons of rice every like 5 minutes or whatever.
I imagine there's some people that might go the other way as well, depending if maybe they haven't done as long a fast as you have. If they've done like a day fast, I imagine like that could have like they could probably just like eat way too much and like
big time.
Everyone seems to view diet through the lens of like weight loss. Well, I think weight loss is literally the least interesting factor about diet.
Yeah, same.
I think the most interesting is like performance, like mentally and physically, right? Mostly mentally. Because if you eat like a load of, like, I know that if I eat like a bowl of rice, I'm going to fucking sleep. I'm not going to be able to do the things that I need to do. I'm not going to be able to work at a decent level. But it's like, if you can do a fast, like mentally you're still quite switched on. I find that, and physically, I wouldn't want to do like Grill said, I wouldn't want to do like fucking any sort of like HIIT training or like crazy sprints or anything, because you don't have like the sugar to actually do that. But like, weight loss is like a byproduct of everything else.
Yeah, I think you can eat healthily and be overweight though. There are people that have very nutrient-rich diets and can be overweight. I think the reason why like weight loss is the thing that gets brought up again and again is because obesity is just such a big problem now. Like it's such a pressing problem that is brought to everyone's attention now, and it's because it's like linked to so many health issues. It seems to be the one that's like the priority of like various governments to fix and stuff. I agree with you. People get hung up on it like way too much. Like, and I think people like you and me who are like, obviously we look after ourselves and like we're healthy and we've got, I like to think that we're both relatively happy with our bodies. We can focus on that stuff that's more about performance. Whereas I'd say the majority of the population in the West can't, because they're all fat fucks.
Do you think a lot of this is due to like the loss of the tradition of cooking? So like most people don't cook, most people don't do things like 100% themselves.
Absolutely,
so therefore, yeah. I think I was watching this fucking Gordon Ramsay thing where he was saying about like cooking is not just like it's not like a middle class fancy time, right? You're going to eat 3 meals. Let's say you're on a 3-meal plan, whatever the fuck, or we're all eating 1 meal like James Cameron. But like, if you're eating 3 meals, you're literally doing that 7 days a week for the rest of your life. So you should probably learn how to cook.
Here's a slight tangent and a sneak preview for some of the stuff we might talk about in the next one. It talks about like cooking and eating.
Not part 3, is there?
No, not yet.
Hobbs and Shaw.
Fuck's sake.
Fucking the battle of the 5 armies. No, so it talks about we're just obsessed with lists. We're obsessed with rules. And a lot of that is because people learn to read, literally, and obviously the internet. But when people used to cook for themselves, it uses the fucking golden goose word of phronesis. People literally practiced phronesis, so practical wisdom. They didn't have like lists and recipes and shit. They just based what they did off experience and wisdom. It's a bit like, say you've got someone to come in for a job interview, and you're like, oh, are they a viable candidate? Well, rather than just like fucking looking at the list and filling quotas and God knows what, and just like going by the book, like, well, you've been in this job for 40 years. Can you not tell a good candidate from a bad one just based off your experience? But basically, we've lost a lot of that, like home cooking, that kind of stuff. So I think that extends to our attitude with things like fasting as well. Because I think what you were saying about, like, okay, well, we need to kind of know when to fast and when not to fast. There's no formula, there's no rule, there's no like algorithmic set kind of way to do it. Everything's completely fluid. It's like, I think we just got too stuck with like deferring to external rules and like calorie counting, micromanagement. It's just like, how does it feel?
Well, it's control. It's just a nice way to soothe the old amygdala. And it's like there's a really interesting study about people's bedtimes and how people who have I was talking to this about to my year 13 class today, because they were like, oh, I went to bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
And it's like, people who don't have control over their like lives seek to take back control in other ways. So like going to bed late is like a good way of taking back control over. That
is such a red pill. Yeah.
So you do other things to take back control of other elements. So it's like, I know, for example, if shit's going bad at work, I'm going to fucking go home and play Shogun 2 and fucking sit in my pants and pretend to be fucking rural samurai overlord, right? So we look for control in areas when we can find it. So a lot of fasting I was doing last year was just like PGCE shit. So you have no control of those elements apart from things you can do. So you just look for control in other things that you can do.
Being good at different games, isn't it?
That's like... It's a nice, good old bit of escapism.
Well, yeah. Also, I think there's like a zen to cutting onions. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to get some credentials and call it the zen of.
Right, lads. How do I actually cut an onion like not retardedly? Because every time I do, I always think I've read the right way, and I just go, my eyes, and I realise I've shut all the doors off, so all of it's streaming into one little kitchenette room, and I've got nowhere to escape.
Yeah. So the onion root is the bit that gives you the fucking poison. So there's a Gordon Ramsay video that I'll literally link, which is like the way to cut onions.
I'll put this in the show notes because I need to do this as well. I keep thinking I've done it right.
I've put it to generals now. It's literally like the fucking way to do onions, mate. It's so sick. But like, there's something sick in just like doing meal prep and just like not listening to any bollocks on like fucking podcasts or music or whatever. Just doing the job and just actually being present.
Yeah, just being immersed in a task. We'll definitely talk about that next time because like I've got loads of notes on like cooking and eating.
See, I have my tunes on when I'm cooking. I always do.
Yeah,
I find I can enjoy both. I like the cooking and I like the music as well. It's just or a podcast or whatever. Like each to their own, though. I guess. Like I think the whole taking back the control thing was really interesting. Though. That's cool. I never thought of it like that with the whole sleep thing. I think. I think that's why people bully. That's why people like do like bully and stuff like that. If they're getting bullied themselves, they'll seek to take back control. But if they're getting picked on at home by their dad, they'll take back control by going out and picking on somebody at school or whatever. It's interesting.
Yeah, and it's having that humility as well to recognize, oh shit, no, I'm literally a slave to this. I'm just like, my brain is just fucking automatically compensating in one area because it can't do the thing in that area. Yeah. Just stepping back for a second. Yeah,
because we don't have a fucking choice, mate. So it's like, that whole thing about baboons, right? So like after the baboon gets attacked by a more dominant baboon, it like passes on its anxiety by attacking a smaller baboon, and it works, and it like is a really effective way of like passing on the stress and like diffusing stress.
Yeah.
So I have a Robert Sapolsky. He's fucking sick, mate. He's a behavioral biologist.
Oh yeah, I do know him. Yeah. Sorry, you showed me him before.
It's like fucking Jordan Peterson of like biology, mate. He's just got loads of online lectures. It's pretty cool.
Neuroendocrinologist. That's a fucking cool title. Yeah, I got him up and I got Peter Attia up, mate. I'm going to get on that later.
I wish I had a cool job title. A neuroendocrinologist.
Trust.
I think I would recommend a fast to most people, but only not because of any health benefits or whatever. I think it just is important for establishing, because I can't think of any other way to establish utter control, because hunger is just such a big thing.
Self-discipline.
Yeah, literally. And I do think we need it because of all the things we've been talking about. It's like, I think the difference between religious fasting and this potential secular fasting is heteronomy. So obviously religions are heteronomous because they think that this element of control is centered around the thing in the sky or the thing in another dimension giving them choice, like taking away their choice, or it's external rule, not self-rule. And I think we talk a lot about self-rule in terms of religion, but is it really self-rule because it's all externally sourced to God or whatever your deity is? So that's why I think just we haven't really built a philosophy, especially in the West, of self-rule. And I think like fasting is just the fastest way to that. Like a modern spirituality, like you were saying about appreciation of what we have when we get it. So why don't we just have a fucking secular festival where we just eat at the end of it and appreciate what we have in a positive way?
Mate, it already exists. No Nut November, mate. The most culturally significant fast in the history of humankind.
That's genuinely fucking legit.
By amount of followers, I'd say that's probably true.
That's actually death of God. That's some genuine death of God shit kicking off there, though.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I genuinely think like the more shit you see, the more you're like, actually, Nietzsche saying God is dead and we killed him is like the fucking most mental phrase ever. And you just see it.
Yeah, I think it's like the most defining. I think he is the defining philosopher of the modern era, simply because of that sentiment alone. It's
fucking crazy.
You've got Christianity, the big waves of thought. You've got Christianity, Enlightenment, God is dead. Like the three big ones. Fucking, we're in that period now. Of course, Nietzsche said there's only fucking one way out of that. Need some kind of fucking painter or whatever to come along, but very quickly, and he basically didn't. Some sort of
so sick.
Some big like cultural figure, like a painter or an opera person.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, Hitler thought it was him because he misread Nietzsche's books.
The Ubermensch, didn't he?
Yeah. The Overman, the Superman, the Ubermensch, whatever you want to call it. He thought it was him. It's just like, it's not you, mate. It's literally, he's talking about like fucking opera singer or something. Somebody is he thought it was Wagner actually. But then Wagner was like, so it was so totalitarian that he made Nietzsche sick when he went to his opera. He was just like, this guy is going to like change the world in love and peace. He's going to be like the next Jesus. And then he sees this horrible, disgusting racist play, and he's just like throwing up in the auditorium.
Wait,
he had to leave halfway through.
Which one was it? Fucking Valkyries or some shit.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah,
trust. We're Ashley and I watching Apocalypse Now at the moment. I was thinking about Valkyries. Yeah. I just sort of sat message the group chat with how to do onions. The boys are going to have no context with that.
It's the
I had the
root.
same thing as you. I was literally just like, how the fuck do I do onions? Just typed in Gordon Ramsay onions, and there was like,
How make
cheers.
chicken good.
So the last thing he talks about is why we should resist the breakfast buffet. And he's talking about the virtue of character very generally. So some people, i.e. not me, they think it's perfectly acceptable to steal food from a buffet. And not just steal food from it, like bread and cheese to make a packed lunch later, but just fucking like hoarding completely on it. I don't know if you've been to like many sort of like these posh B&Bs where you get like the continental laid on, and you get I normally do like Airbnb, so I really have much experience with it. That's another thing I picked up on this actually. He's quite fucking middle class. I think we talked about that last time where he was like
philosopher.
Literally, yeah. But so you get the continental breakfast, and then you get your hot food after your cooked breakfast. And he basically just laying into people that eat the continental and then go for cooked. Because he's like, that's the fucking wrong way around. It doesn't make any sense. And now you're fucking stuffed. And then they'll get like sandwiches for later. Basically, just like this reveals something about people's character. Now, I actually slightly disagree with him on a couple of these points.
Jump in and say, the more I found out about what this guy thinks, the less I like him. Do you know what I mean? I started out genuinely like with some of the sourcing things. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I just think these last things he's saying are just kind of weird and a bit unsat. He just throws around some random words. Retweet that, Julian.
Yeah, I like some of the stuff he says, but I feel like some of it's quite obvious, and like there seems to be a bit of word salad. But yeah, no, I think some of the stuff that you said definitely makes sense, and I'd agree with.
Can I get a copy of this book so I can do a book report on it?
He's losing me here, I must admit, with the whole.
It's just instant gratification again. Like you want the thing you've got in front of you rather than the thing that's come.
So I think if anyone's going to agree, it might be you. This whole like self-discipline thing, but then it loses. I think it's going to lose everyone because it's like, do you know what? Yeah, so he thinks it's kind of dishonest to take every opportunity you can. So when you get this big breakfast buffet, the kind of agreed social contract is that you're going to eat it there and then. If you start like literally taking half the table away to eat later, he considers it kind of dishonest. It's not that it's, so if you think of like interpersonal ethics, like classic sort of utilitarian stuff, it doesn't really make a difference because it's not a big thing, the way we classically think about ethics. His problem is that it reveals probably a much worse petty character flaw when we think about ethics in terms of virtue instead of utilitarianism. So he basically just thinks that, I mean, it's not quite the same as personality because personality is ethically neutral, but it's the choices we make that reflect certain values and virtues. And he basically just thinks if you're nicking from a breakfast buffet, I think he's just had a few too many bad experiences in posh B&Bs.
Yeah, this is similar to something that I heard recently, actually, which is the people making the conscious choice to put a shopping trolley back in a shopping like when you're outside Tesco and you've taken your trolley to your car, you unload all the shit in the car. The difference between the people that make the conscious decision to go and put that trolley back just because it's like the decent human thing to do, and the people that will just leave it out, and like. They kind of talk about that in the same sort of vein. Like it sounds daft. It sounds like something simple, but it tells a lot about a person, like how they.
Yeah.
And then there's the third category of people who just like throw it in the canal because it's funny.
Yeah.
They just go completely out of their way to cause havoc instead.
Yeah.
But no, I think a similar sort of observable thing that most people will see on a, let's say again, sort of like a weekly shop, is you always have a couple of people just crowding around the reduced item section of the fridge aisle, and there's always like one bloke who just takes all of the bacon just for himself, just because he knows he can store it in his fridge later. And it's because there's no kind of set sort of boundary as to how many he's accepted socially to take. He can just kind of take the piss. I mean, sure, he's not going to take one. He's going to capitalize on that. Again, a bit of, utilitarianism and take, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But when does that stop? You know?
Yeah, because under utilitarianism, it's good. Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right in saying taking the piss, because it's like it really is down to the intention. It is like, are you doing it to take the piss, or are you doing it because you're kind of planning the day ahead? You're exercising the kind of virtue of organization. You have a good sense of money. You're being opportunistic in a good way. I don't necessarily see why that's a bad thing. You know, you don't want to be wasteful. It's carpe diem, isn't it? Like, and it is almost a sense of like, I think it's getting value. The one thing I do agree with him here, and I think this is really the crux of his point, the buffets are microcosms for everything wrong with food. And they're sort of like a very good theatre to think about ethics more generally. And like you were saying about the supermarket, like these are the places where ethics happens. Buffet in particular, it's like there's loads of choice, eat everything you can, cheap ingredients for maximum profit. And like the best compliment you can pay someone is like, I'm fucking stuffed. And it's like, that's not really like, is that really a good attitude to eating? I mean, fine, if you want to do that, that's cool. But when it comes to this more subjective argument of like, well, how about we eat for this and that, like autonomy, willpower, like, you know, kind of makes maybe a little bit more sense to do that. I definitely agree that this sort of Aristotelian idea that ethics happens everywhere. It's not just like euthanasia pops up into the room and like, oh, it's like Pokemon, like an ethical dilemma appeared in the wild grass. It's like, you're always doing ethics and you should always be thinking about your character, the supermarket, the trolley, the fucking, you know, your interaction with the cashier. So in that sense, I agree with him. I'm just not sure if taking a sandwich is really the best fucking like indicator of poor virtues. I think it's fine. I mean, have you guys ever like done that, loaded up on stuff that's technically free?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that's a bad revelation of character?
Pens at UCAS conventions, mate. Nah, free merch.
Open day, yeah.
I'm trying to, I've done that in quite a lot of scenarios, actually, to be honest. It's one of those ones that's like a perceived victimless crime, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it is. You know,
it's not really though, is it? If it's something that's put out there, like in like with the kind of on the proviso that people will take what they need as opposed to like taking the piss, then I'd say it's no longer a victimless crime. Somebody has stumped up for that and taken. Although technically that person's taken a risk by providing free, and they should know that that's part of it. And
yeah,
it's like you know, like those honesty boxes that you'll see like out in the countryside. Like people will like say they'll have like eggs for sale, and like you know, have an honesty box where like obviously you pay like £1 for eggs. I've always wondered if there's like a percentage of people that would just like take all of them and do a poo in the box.
Nobody's that hard up for eggs.
Yeah, or like just smash the lot of them or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, but once again, it's that sort of, you're presented with that choice, aren't you? Like,
I'd say the ratio was probably quite high until you said, and then poo in the box. That's a very low percent.
But like, yeah, I never would do that, but I you know, I would take ketchup sachets because, you know, I can always do with more ketchup. The costs are covered, and I'm only doing it because the costs are covered. If the costs weren't, I would never take anything.
Yeah, but again, it's like the whole like higher resolution picture is kind of key, and it's again sort of like not applying a blanket thing over different case scenarios. I mean, going back to my bacon guy at the supermarket, let's say he knew that he was going to have the storage capacity to freeze all that bacon and he'd still actually use all of it. There's nothing to say that half the families that come by won't just end up not using that bacon and chucking it out. But also, if that guy, let's say timing wise, the shop shuts at 10 o'clock at night and he's gone in there at 9:58, no one else is going to buy it, are they? But if he steals all of it at 7 o'clock, then you think, well...
Yeah, I that's actually something I think he mentions. He says about like, oh, maybe everyone else at the B&B would have eaten that anyway, or maybe they've got some sort of like kind of thing set up where they feed the homeless afterwards. Like, yeah, but until you know that, if everyone knew that, I don't think they would take anything. I think there might be some greedy bastards who did, but I think for most people, it is literally just a case of this is free and it's for me, and so I will take a bit more for later. I really don't see that it's too much of a problem in terms of character.
I mean, like a lot of that just about going out of date stuff, they can't give it to like the homeless or food banks or anything when it's like out of date and meat like that. When it's gone, it's just chucked away.
Yeah.
So maybe he is doing the right thing for everyone, concern.
Yeah, well, until you know, it's relatively open game.
Do you think it's like this is water though, isn't it? Because it's like you're just viewing it through your own perspective. You don't know that other person's perspective. So that guy going in, that hypothetical bloke going in and buying like 7 packs could be taken home because he's got like 9 kids and he hasn't got much money to feed them. Or he could be going home and turning it into bacon sandwiches for the homeless.
Yeah,
Well,
shit.
yeah.
You see him go in on his own, but exactly. You don't know he's got a big family waiting.
Yeah, your assumptions of his behavior are just purely based on your like reading the situation and your like personal biases and baggage that you bring with you.
That's another
Yeah,
red
absolutely.
Fucking David Foster cool.
Foster
Isn't
cool.
wrong with me.
Would you steal a handbag?
Would you steal a DVD?
Yeah, mate. Fucking.
I genuinely think it's useful to think in terms of virtues rather than like, oh, fucking this situation, what would you do, X, Y? You were doing something like that, weren't you, Sam? You were like fucking attacking us and telling us to tell you like your vices and shit that one time. Are you still doing that?
It's like yearly feedback things because like you're not the best viewer of yourself. I don't think you're always going to be an unreliable narrator. So it's like if you go to people who are close to you and go, what are some things that I do that because everyone does things that like other people find annoying, right? But then that person doesn't know that other people think they're annoying. So you get like someone who eats like cornflakes, scraping the bowl, dinging it, and like going like doing some weird noises, right? They don't know they do that until you go, fuck grill, stop eating those cornflakes like that. So I think it's good to get other people's perspectives and shit.
Well, I mean, what sort of qualities were you looking? Obviously, it's not just about cornflakes, but like, what kind of qualities were you hoping to like expose or work on?
I can't remember what it is. It's like a business analysis thing, right? Business meeting with business, but it's like if you get different views from different angles, it's like putting a different lens on things. So let's say everyone says, "Oh, I'm sick and tired of you." I think one of the ones I got was saying stupid shit, not thinking about other people's feelings. So I got that from like 2 or 3 people. And I was like, oh, fuck, that is actually something I do. Fair enough. Or like being late for things. Or if that was a thing that comes up in like 4 or 5 things, you're like, okay, so that is actually something I need to work on. Because I think it's like, and this is going to cut into the Judako Kano thing we're looking at in judo. It's like, I think you are just like the habits that you do every single day. I don't think virtue is like a thing. Like you said, virtue is not something turned on or off. It's literally something you're doing all the time, especially when no one else is around, through the small habits and the small things you do each day.
Yeah, I think Aristotle says something like, we are what we habitually do. And it's like all we can do is like try and work on those things. Because if you just think of ethics or, cultivating character in terms of like, oh, the big situation is turned up. It's like, oh, that's just thinking of life like D&D. Like you're in an encounter or whatever, roll for initiative. It's like, that's not really, it's all about habits because that's what drives moral decisions. I mean, there is some evidence to suggest that people sort of really make moral decisions when the back's against the wall, but that can go either way as well. I don't think it's very fair to judge somebody when that amount of fucking adrenaline is running in them. Like, they're in a car crash. Did they save their mate? It's like, well, shit. Either way, there, it's like that could be a revelation of what you're really like. If you're generally kind of a grumpy, shitty person, then you save your mate in a car crash, or you could be generally a very nice person and then not save your mate because you've just fucking split your head open. I don't know which one to believe. Really, the psychology is still a bit unclear on it.
There's a really good book by a fucking geezer called Dr. Dick Thompson, who was Kieran. He was that bloke who jumped out of the aeroplane and cut his hands up on like the rope.
Wait, sorry, that guy's a doctor.
Yeah, he's PhD in like neurochemistry.
What the fuck? You didn't tell me that. Oh yeah, that guy's skits, mate. Yeah, he's absolute nutcase. Like, yeah, I only heard a little bit of what he did, but
yeah, when you just look at yourself in grand scheme of things, we're just like shit human beings. When that dude just like special forces through Vietnam, does all that crazy stuff, gets out, goes through like training programs, becomes like a fucking doctor, and then writes books and shit, and then owns companies. But like he wrote a book called The Stress Effects, and it talks about like how stress just affects our sort of decisions poorly. And he's got a great phrase, which is, we don't rise to the occasion, we sink to the level of our habits.
Nice. Right, don't forget to give this video a big fucking
swear down, Julian Baggini is the last fucking syllables that Smeagol screamed.
Wait, what? When he dies in Mount Doom?
Yeah, when he gets tortured.
I'm thinking of the bit where he goes over the cliff after Shelob.
Oh, yeah,
He
that as
doesn't die there, does he? No, yeah. Shit, of course. If you got time to, of course you have. You've always got time to do shit, haven't you?
I always got time, mate. I woke up 12 o'clock yesterday afternoon for today. I just think, like, the thing about diet is, like, who gives a fuck? Like, I actually really don't like when people are like, oh, I lost 3 pounds. I'm like, oh, who fucking cares? I don't fucking care. What are you doing? What are you doing in your life?
Yeah, it depends on your goal, isn't it? Like, if they're just losing weight for like the sake of it, then whatever. But like, if they're losing weight because like they're fucking morbidly depressed about how obese they are, then it's a good thing because they're going to be a good person.
Depression comes from your self story, though, doesn't it? So it's like, if you're living a shit life, you get that story like from your inner self. Can I get a good take?
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, Paolo Nettini. I'm just grumpy, to be honest. So, don't take it personally, mate.
Fucking Bruno Tonioli, what his name is.
Yeah, don't take it personally, me old mucker.
Julian Baggini, share our work.